Imagine waking up one morning and finding out the money sitting in your drawer, the Iraqi dinar or the Vietnamese dong, suddenly skyrocketed in value. People have been waiting for years, hoping for what they call the big RV or revaluation. Now, with Donald Trump returning to the White House in 2025, the conversations around these currencies are heating up once again. Investors, speculators, and even ordinary people who bought bundles of dinar or dong years ago are asking the same burning question: could this finally be the moment that everything changes? Today, we're diving deep into Trump's second presidency, what his policies could mean for both Iraq and Vietnam, and what realistic expectations you should have as someone holding these currencies. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear may change how you think about your investment forever, and it may help you avoid the biggest mistakes most people make. Let's start with the basics, because understanding where things stand right now is crucial. The dinar, also known as IQD, is the official currency of Iraq. As of today in 2025, $1 equals roughly for 300 dinars. That means if you purchase 1 million dinars, you spent around $770. On the other hand, the Vietnamese dong or VND is Vietnam's currency, and the exchange rate sits at about 24,000 dong for $1. That means you can buy a million dong for less than $50. These exchange rates have stayed mostly stable for many years, but what keeps people excited is the idea that these currencies are artificially undervalued. Supporters of the revaluation theory believe Iraq and Vietnam will one day dramatically increase the value of their money. This belief has created a massive community of currency holders across America, with some estimates saying millions are quietly waiting for the so-called RV to finally take place. Why does Donald Trump's presidency matter in all this? The answer lies in his unique and often aggressive approach to international trade and currency policies. During his first term, Trump repeatedly criticized countries that he believed were manipulating or artificially lowering their currency values. His argument was that such tactics gave those nations an unfair trade advantage over the United States. Trump positioned himself as someone who wanted fair deals, stronger U.S. trade relationships, and economic strategies that forced other countries to play fair. Iraq and Vietnam fall directly into categories Trump has shown interest in. Iraq, with its massive oil reserves, remains a critical global energy player, while Vietnam has positioned itself as a rising manufacturing hub competing directly with China. Trump's history shows he sees opportunities in both countries, and that is exactly why currency holders are watching his every move in 2025. Let's take a closer look at Iraq first. Iraq's economy heavily relies on oil, with about 90% of government revenue tied to oil exports. Over the past few years, Iraq has been rebuilding its infrastructure, developing new oil fields, and strengthening its banking system. International companies are slowly regaining confidence and investing in Iraq again. These steps create hope for a stronger economy and, by extension, a stronger dinar. However, the truth is more complex. Currency values don't increase simply because a country wants them to. They are determined by global trust, inflation rates, GDP growth, trade balances, and political stability. Iraq has made real progress, but challenges remain, such as government corruption, security concerns in some regions, and heavy dependence on oil prices that rise and fall unpredictably. These factors make it difficult for the dinar to suddenly shoot up in value, no matter who sits in the White House. Vietnam's story is very different from Iraq's, but equally interesting. Vietnam's economy has been expanding at a strong pace for decades, supported by manufacturing exports and foreign investment. The country has become one of the top alternatives to China for global companies looking to diversify their supply chains. Over the years, Vietnam has modernized its infrastructure, welcomed international partnerships, and implemented reforms to improve economic stability. This growth sounds like a recipe for a stronger currency, but here's the catch: Vietnam actually benefits from keeping the dong weak. A weaker dong makes Vietnam's exports cheaper and more competitive in global markets. This means their factories attract more orders from around the world. For that reason, the government carefully manages the dong to stay low while controlling inflation. So even though Vietnam's economy is strong, a sudden and dramatic revaluation of its currency is very unlikely to happen overnight. Here's where Trump's role comes back into focus. Trump has always been vocal about using tariffs, sanctions, and direct trade negotiations to push countries into adjusting economic policies. In his second presidency, it's expected that he may again put pressure on nations to play fair with their currencies. For Iraq, this could mean stronger oil-based agreements and encouragement to stabilize its financial system. For Vietnam, it could mean the U.S. continues moving supply chains out of China and deeper into Vietnam, which could indirectly strengthen Vietnam's long-term economy. However, the important word here is indirect. While these moves might create healthier economies over time, they do not automatically translate into a sudden RV, or revaluation, that currency holders have been waiting for. Let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions about revaluation. Many investors think one day the central banks of Iraq or Vietnam will wake up and announce that their currency is suddenly worth 10 or even 100 times more. While this makes for an exciting story, it doesn't match how currency markets work. Currency values are tied to economic fundamentals, and changes happen gradually. A famous example often used by dinar investors is Kuwait, which saw its currency restored after the Gulf War, but that case was extremely unique, tied directly to wartime conditions, and cannot be compared to Iraq or Vietnam's current situations. The truth is that while appreciation is possible, it would likely happen slowly over years, not overnight. This is why having realistic expectations is critical. Now let's imagine some scenarios for Iraq. If the country continues developing its oil infrastructure, increases production, and strengthens its financial regulations, the dinar could gradually appreciate over the next several years. A more stable political environment could also attract greater foreign investment, which would support the dinar's value. For Vietnam, if U.S. companies continue shifting production away from China and into Vietnamese factories, the economy could grow even faster. This growth could strengthen the dong, but again it would likely be slow and carefully managed by the Vietnamese government. In both cases, Trump's policies might create favorable conditions, but they are unlikely to trigger the dramatic overnight RV that many people hope for. Another point investors need to consider is Trump's consistent push for a stronger U.S. dollar. In the past, Trump emphasized policies that supported the American economy first. A stronger dollar, however, makes foreign currencies relatively weaker. So while Iraq and Vietnam could benefit from stronger economies under global trade shifts, the U.S. dollar's strength might limit how far and how fast the dinar or dong could climb in value. This is an important factor that many people overlook when they imagine sudden windfalls from holding foreign currency. So, what should dinar and dong holders really expect? The most realistic outcome is gradual appreciation tied to steady economic growth, reforms, and stability in Iraq and Vietnam. That means any potential profits would likely come over years, not weeks. Smart investors understand the focus on long-term trends rather than chasing get-rich-quick hopes. For Iraq, while revenue and political reform will be the main drivers, for Vietnam, export competitiveness and foreign investment will play the biggest roles. In both cases, dramatic jumps are highly unlikely, but slow growth is possible if conditions improve. Let's also discuss some practical issues currency holders often ignore. If you're holding dinars or dong, you need to remember that converting them back into US dollars isn't always easy. Most American banks don't deal with these currencies, which means you may have to use specialty exchange services. These services often charge significant fees, and those fees can eat into any potential profits. Storage is another issue. Many people keep bundles of paper currency at home, which creates risks of loss, theft, or damage. So while the dream of revaluation is attractive, the reality of managing and converting these currencies is much more complicated than most people realize. A big red flag to watch out for is unrealistic promises. Over the years, there have been countless services, dealers, and so-called experts claiming they know exactly when the RV will happen. Some even set specific dates, convincing people to buy large amounts of currency in a rush. This is extremely dangerous. The truth is no one knows exactly when, or even if, major currency changes will happen for Iraq or Vietnam. Legitimate dealers will always remind you of the risks and never pressure you to buy more than you can afford. If you ever hear someone guarantee overt wealth from dinar or dong, that's your signal to walk away. Now bring it back to Donald Trump in 2025. What's the bottom line? Trump's policies could encourage stronger trade deals, more U.S. investment in energy and manufacturing, and reduced reliance on China. These conditions might support Iraq's and Vietnam's long-term growth, which in turn could help their currencies gradually gain strength. But the fantasy of instant millionaires being created overnight is still far from reality. For anyone holding these currencies, patience, caution, and realistic expectations will always be the smartest strategy. One positive factor for dinar and dong holders is the global trend of diversification. More countries are seeking new trade partners and new economic opportunities, which could benefit both Iraq and Vietnam. Iraq, with its oil wealth, remains strategically important, while Vietnam is becoming central to global supply chains. These shifts don't guarantee a sudden RV, but they do create the foundation for healthier, stronger economies in the future. If Trump continues policies that encourage these partnerships, the long-term outlook could indeed be favorable, even if it's not the overnight jackpot some imagine. So, where does this leave you as an investor or currency holder? First, know the facts. The dinar and dong are not worthless, but they are also not going to transform your financial life in one night. Second, understand the risks, from storage to conversion to scams. Third, watch the real economic developments, not rumors. If Iraq secures more stability and reforms its government, that matters. If Vietnam continues to attract manufacturing away from China, that matters too. These real-world changes whoop the future value of these currencies far more than any speculation you hear online. As we close, here's the truth you must carry with you. Trump's second presidency may create opportunities, may apply pressure, and may influence global economic patterns, but no single politician can magically create a currency revaluation that multiplies values overnight. If you are holding dinars or dong, you're part of a large group of hopeful investors, but the smart ones are those who stay grounded, informed, and realistic. The future may bring growth, but it will be slow, steady, and based on real economic progress. Stay informed, avoid hype, and keep watching developments closely, because in the world of currencies, patience and knowledge are your most powerful tools.